Can you imagine coming home to find your brand new truck about to be towed, with two shady characters claiming to be cops and your HOA president smugly watching? That's exactly what happened to me. But they made one tiny mistake. They messed with an FBI task force officer. It all started when I moved into what I thought was a peaceful neighborhood. I'm a federal agent, specifically part of an FBI task force. And my work requires me to be on call 24/7. My take-home vehicle is a government-issued unmarked pickup truck. It's fully equipped for surveillance and tactical operations, but to the untrained eye, it just looks like a nice new truck. The problems began almost immediately with Margaret, the HOA president. She seemed to have a personal vendetta against me from day one. My truck, apparently, was the main issue. It didn't have commercial plates, it wasn't a work van. But she insisted it was a commercial vehicle, and therefore against the HOA bylaws. I tried to explain my situation, that it was a government vehicle for federal law enforcement, and that I had a federal exemption letter. She just scoffed and said, "Rules are rules." The harassment was constant. I'd get violation notices for my lawn being a quarter-inch too high, or for having a non-approved welcome mat. I paid the fines just to keep the peace, but it was clear she was targeting me. My neighbors were great, though. They all knew Margaret was a tyrant and secretly cheered me on. One neighbor, a retired Army colonel, even offered to help me strategize against her. Things escalated when I bought my own personal truck, a brand new F250. It was my dream truck, fully loaded. I parked it in my driveway next to my government vehicle. The very next day, I got a violation notice. To commercial vehicles, it claimed. I was furious. I went to the next HOA meeting armed with my vehicle registrations, the city ordinance defining commercial vehicles, and my federal exemption letter. I laid it all out, and my personal truck was registered for personal use. My government truck was exempt. The board, except for Margaret, looked uncomfortable. They voted to dismiss the violation. I thought I had one. I was wrong. A few weeks later, I was coming home from a long shift. 'Twas late, around 10 p.m., as I turned onto my street. I saw a tow truck hooking up to my F-250, my personal truck. Standing there, with a triumphant smirk on her face, was Margaret. Next to her were two men in cheap, ill-fitting security guard uniforms that were clearly trying to look like police outfits. They had fake badges and toy store quality duty belts. I pulled up, got out of my government vehicle, and walked over calmly. "What's going on here?" I asked. Margaret puffed out her chest. "We are seizing this vehicle for repeated violations of HOA bylaws. These officers are here to ensure it goes smoothly." The two fake cops tried to look intimidating. One of them, a lanky guy who looked barely out of his teens, stepped forward. "Sir, we're with the Kings County Enforcement Division. We have a court order to seize this vehicle." I almost laughed. Kings County Enforcement Division. No such thing. And their uniforms were a joke. I looked him in the eye and said, "Show me this court order." He fumbled in his pocket and produced a crumpled piece of paper. It was a poorly photoshopped document with my name misspelled. It was laughable. I looked at Margaret. "You're really going through with this, Margaret, on the basis of a fake document and two guys playing dress-up?" Her smirk faltered. "They are legitimate officers," she shrieked. That's when I decided playtime was over. I reached into my jacket, pulled out my badge and credentials, and held them up. "Federal Bureau of Investigation Task Force," I said, my voice low and firm. "You are currently interfering with a federal officer and attempting to illegally seize property using impersonators of law enforcement. That's a felony." The change in the atmosphere was instant. The two fake cops went pale. The tow truck driver, who had been watching from his cab, immediately started unhooking my truck. Margaret's face went from smug to terrified. She started stammering. "I didn't know. They told me they were real." "Save it," I said, pulling out my phone. I dialed the actual police department, my department. I requested a supervisor and several units to my location. For a felony in progress, impersonating a police officer, I read them my address and stayed on the line. I looked at the two fake cops. You too, stay right where you are. Don't even think about moving. They were frozen in fear. The lanky one looked like he was about to cry. Within minutes, 3 patrol cars, lights flashing, screamed into our quiet cul-de-sac. A police sergeant I knew well, Sergeant Davis, got out of the first car. He walked over, saw me, and said, "What's the circus?" I explained the situation, pointing to Margaret and her 2 officers. Davis looked at the impersonators, then back at me, and just shook his head in disbelief. The real police officers put the 2 fakes in handcuffs. They confessed immediately. They worked for a shady security company Margaret had hired. She'd paid them extra to dress up and pretend to be cops to scare me. She thought she could get my truck towed and win. The tow truck driver gave a statement saying he was just hired for a job and had no idea about the fake cops. He was released then. Sergeant Davis turned to Margaret. She was trying to shrink into the background. "Ma'am," he said, "you're looking at several charges here. Conspiracy, filing a false police report. And that's just for starters. Not to mention the civil liability." Margaret started sobbing, blubbering about rules and how I was a troublemaker. No one was buying it. The fallout was epic. The 2 impersonators were arrested and faced felony charges. The security company they worked for was investigated and lost its license, and the HOA board called an emergency meeting. When presented with the police report and the testimony of multiple neighbors who had witnessed the whole thing, they had no choice. She was removed as president, and the board issued a formal, written apology to me. But I wasn't done. I consulted a lawyer. We filed a massive civil lawsuit against Margaret personally and her now-defunct security company. We sued for harassment, attempted illegal seizure of property, and emotional distress. The legal battle was short. Faced with overwhelming evidence, her lawyer advised her to settle. The settlement was substantial, enough to pay for my F-250 outright and then some. The best part? The new HOA president is the retired Army colonel who lives down the street. The first thing he did was a complete review of all the bylaws. The vague, ridiculous rules that Margaret used to weaponize against people were all removed. The neighborhood is more peaceful than ever. I can park both my trucks in my driveway without a single threatening letter. Sometimes when I'm washing my truck, I see Margaret peeking through her blinds. She never makes eye contact. So, what's the lesson here? Don't mess with people, because you never know who you're messing with. And if you're going to hire fake cops, at least make sure they don't look like they just came from a Halloween party. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to like this video and subscribe to Karen Conflict for more stories. See you next time.